I am Eva. As I write these lines, I can still feel the crackling flames of those days flickering inside me. If it's a confession you want, then yes, this is a confession. But don't look for regret in these sentences, because what I'm about to share is a shocking testament to my reality and my resolve. I recall every moment I lived, every strange turn, every startling violation, every passionate touch with infinite pride. This is the story of a dangerous love gleaming under the city lights, of a pact forged with blood and sweat, of a passion sprouting in the heart of chaos. And I, Eva, was both the hunter and the prey in this story, as well as the architect of my own ruin. When I think of those days, it all appears before my eyes as if it happened only yesterday. The city was colossal and savage. The sharp silhouettes of skyscrapers battled against the darkness settling over the streets, and a vague tension grew at every corner. In this city, justice didn't hold as much worth as money. The law stretched like a rubber band in the hands of the powerful. I had long since learned how to survive in such a terrain. Consciences sold for pennies, blurred boundaries, faces hidden behind masks. In the midst of it all, I danced at the center of a perilous gamble. Who was I? A woman with little to her name, but who wanted a great deal. I had no family, no wealth, and the law was not at my back. My strength was nourished by my own muscle, by cunning moves, by stubborn courage, and perhaps by my merciless allure. Sometimes I imagined myself in a corridor, freedom at one end, collapse at the other. I stood right in the middle, taking a new risk with every step. In those days, there was a man whose name was whispered in cautious, hushed tones throughout the city's dark heart. Silas. He lived in a large, grim mansion, expanding his fortune through dirty deals. Was he a mafia kingpin, a political puppeteer? It was hard to say. Silas was a symbol of absolute power in the city. Without his consent, even a stray cat could hardly breathe. Everyone feared him, tried to keep their distance. I, on the other hand, did the opposite. I set out to do something that would catch his attention. Something that began as a tiny pebble in a filthy backyard of the city would turn into a massive landslide of events. There was an archive building guarded by Silas, surrounded by a concrete shield, at least 3 guards at the door, and state-of-the-art security systems inside. Within that archive were documents of great scandals, political revelations, codes to million-dollar money laundering networks. I set my mind on getting inside. If I succeeded, I would hold not just his fate but that of many others in my grasp. This was more than a show of strength. Maybe inside me was a desire for revenge, or a craving to dismantle the city's rotten order. I don't know. Maybe I just enjoyed living in danger. I wove my plan with meticulous care. I arranged power outages, memorized guard shifts, prepared a device to scramble the alarm circuits. And when night fell, as I stepped onto the streets, even the stars shining over the city seemed to puff themselves up, ready to witness my adventure. With a slim backpack on my shoulders, a gun at my waist, and a stubborn desire in my heart, I slipped into the building that housed the archive. Stairs, narrow hallways, laser sensors. With each hurdle I cleared, my heart both raced and calmed. This had become my life's rhythm, fear and courage gripping my pulse together. At first, things went smoothly inside. I was silent, a shadow gliding like the wind, until that unexpected face appeared. He stood before me, a dark suit, piercing gaze, eyes filled with a cold and calculating intelligence. I didn't need to know his name to identify him. The intensity of his presence was enough. I knew who he was. Marcus. Silas's right-hand man, perhaps more dangerous and cunning than Silas himself. His walk held the sly grace of a serpent. His stare gave a chilling jolt to the heart. The moment I faced Marcus, I thought my entire plan would go down the drain. But it didn't. Instead, a strange game began between us. Marcus drew his gun, and I stood my ground. Capturing me should have been simple for him, yet he didn't pull the trigger. Perhaps my defiant stare intrigued him, or the daring smile on my face caught his interest. In that corridor, for an instant, we sized each other up. I gripped my knife tightly while he slightly lowered his gun. We were on the brink of war, but no one made a move. Then something unexpected happened. The alarm blared. The system I had disabled when I entered had been reactivated, likely by some hidden contingency Marcus had prepared. The corridor was suddenly bathed in red light. Metal doors slammed shut, Escape routes were sealed. Now Marcus and I were trapped together in that sterile, suffocating corridor. We both knew that once backup arrived, I'd be finished. But as I looked at Marcus's face, I saw a baffling expression. It was as if the entire universe was a stage play for him, and he wanted me in a starring role. At that moment, he lowered his weapon, as if he had no intention of shooting me right then. I lunged forward. I wanted to bring him down, move him out of my way. But he stopped me easily. He was unexpectedly strong. He caught my wrist, and our eyes locked. We fought, breathing heavily, as machinery buzzed and the alarm drilled into our ears. Punches, elbows, a physical struggle ensued. But this was no ordinary fight. His touch held a strange warmth, a tension, a magnetic pull. When he pressed on my wrists, I felt a charge that scorched my skin. When he tore off my mask, it was as though my naked identity had been exposed. In that moment, I struggled not to surrender, to give in while trapped in my enemy's arms. That would wound my pride. But every cell of my body, every beat of my heart, whispered something else. When our eyes met again, the chemistry between us was sharper than anything words could explain. It wasn't a fleeting frenzy. It was as if our souls had sworn ages ago to meet at the brink of chaos. I could hardly breathe. The tension was so raw and primal that I couldn't tell which part of me was the enemy and which part was driven by desire. Eventually, as we grappled, my back hit a cold wall. Marcus leaned in close, trapping me so I couldn't move. I was expected to resist, right? But for a second, I closed my eyes. I wanted to absorb the strange beauty of this moment. In the midst of a violent hurricane, I blossomed like a thorny rose. His breath was on my face, his lips so close to my skin. Such an unexpected, forbidden, dangerous closeness stole my breath. And then a spark flickered. Maybe he saw submission in me, or maybe an uncontrollable urge drove him. When our lips met, I fueled that spark into a flame. At that instant, the corridor, the cursed alarm, the red lights, the pounding footsteps outside, all vanished. It was as if we were enclosed in a vacuum, just him and me. A soft moan rose from my lips, his hands gripped my waist firmly, and I lost myself. This was neither the pure water of love nor mere lust. It transcended both, defying any category. From an impossible place, an impossible bond emerged. So risky, so unhealthy, and yet so dizzying. Then we heard footsteps approaching from outside. Guards with guns were on their way. Marcus immediately pulled back. His hostility hadn't ended, nor had I abandoned my intentions. For a moment of madness, we had surrendered to each other, but now we had to return to reality. I had to pull myself together. I looked into his eyes. I could still feel him on my lips, my mind tangled. I could be killed or captured at any second. He, on the other hand, calmly gestured to me. A slight tilt of his head offered a silent proposal. I understood. If we both wanted to survive, we needed a temporary alliance. We quickly moved to a control panel. I hoped Marcus knew the security codes. His fingers danced over the keys, the lock released. We ran down to the lower floors. The building was swarming with security forces, yet instead of turning me over, Marcus led me onward. Why? I didn't know. Maybe that forbidden desire. Maybe he planned to use me. Whatever the reason, I didn't miss the chance. Guided by him, we entered a service tunnel. In that dark, damp passageway, we could hear gunshots echoing behind us. The massive structure was plunging into chaos. Outside, perhaps Silas was going mad. Inside, we two enemies were slipping away, bound by a mysterious closeness. That night, at last, we found an exit. When we reached the city's back streets, both of us were drenched in sweat, gasping for breath. Under the dim glow of a street lamp, we looked at each other. The same question shimmered in our eyes. What now? I could have run away. He could have left me there. But we didn't. We took shelter in a ruined building. There, beneath metal scaffolding and a grimy tarp, we remained silent for a while. Then, we approached each other again. This time there was no immediate danger, not to the same degree anyway. But fear, adrenaline, and turmoil still coursed through our veins. The dirty mask that had concealed my face was gone, his jacket was torn, And instead of calming the fire within us, these signs of struggle only fanned its flames. When he sat beside me, our knees touched. My heart pounded like a drum, my mind clueless about what to do, but my body knew. When I touched his skin, I felt a jolt of electricity. He, as if expecting this touch, stayed still, then turned to look at me. This time our kisses weren't frantic or panicked. They were deeper, more possessive, more filled with surrender. Every touch, every breath melted away our armor, illuminating the dark corners of our beings. That night, in that abandoned building, under rusty metal beams, what we experienced cannot be put into words. Was it love? Perhaps too soon to say. But it was something far beyond mere passion. Into lust we mixed pain, fear, anger, curiosity, and admiration. As Marcus's fingers travelled along my neck, I surrendered to the rising warmth within me. The tension, the forbidden nature, the impossibility of it all only fueled this union further. In that moment, all the decay, the evil, the power struggles of the city became irrelevant. It was only us. Two enemies entangled in disputes, and yet two blazing fireballs. When dawn's first light seeped in, we dressed quietly, as if shy, afraid of breaking the spell. The sky was a heavy grey, the streets stirring awake. We spoke not a word, but our glances said everything. This was no fairy tale. I expected no happy ending. People like us either drown in chaos or learn to control it. Where would this bond lead us? I didn't know, but I felt no regret. That moment was a pinnacle in my life. Dangerous, intoxicating, blooming like a bloody flower. In the following days, Marcus and I avoided and chased each other, clashed sometimes. While Silas's men searched for me everywhere, Marcus would appear like a shadow cornering me, then strangely letting me go again. On rooftops, in abandoned factories, in the cold breath of night, we met over and over, each time the same volcano erupted. What kind of alliance was this? What kind of feeling? I couldn't name it. But I couldn't stop my body from wanting him. Clearly he wanted me too, because he never turned me in, never killed me when he could. Even if this was strategy on his part, the dark glimmer in his eyes during those moments indicated something far more profound. Time passed. The city's balance of power shifted. Silas began to lose his grip. Scandals erupted. Documents from the archive leaked out. Perhaps I had achieved my goal. Maybe I had initiated the chaos, wielded the scalpel on the city's rotten heart. I could count that as my victory, but the taste of victory lingered bittersweetly in my mouth because of Marcus. The twisted bond we shared kneaded hatred and desire into the same dough and served it to me. Part of me longed to be free, to run, not to be tied to anything. Another part couldn't resist the surge that rose within whenever I knew he was out there, watching me. Once, we met in an abandoned suburban train station outside the city. Neither of us explained why we had come there. With a single glance, we understood that once again some magnetic force had drawn us together. This time words fell from our lips, short, clipped, meaningful sentences. Each one either filled the chasm between us with concrete or tore it down again. We fought, hurled insults, then erased those insults with kisses. We must have been insane. There was no logic here. And now as I tell you these things, I relive those days. Each moment is like a heady wine lingering on my tongue, dizzying and intense. Regret? No, never. Those dangerous kisses, those secret nocturnal meetings, that flight amid blood and sweat, they reinvented me. I am Eva. Once I might have been ordinary, but never again. This chaos, this passion, these harsh edges of a love that defies definition, have sharpened me and perhaps hurt me, but also created a fiery curtain between me and life. You might ask what happened in the end. Are you expecting a finale? Perhaps Marcus and I joined hands and lived happily ever after, or maybe we shot each other in the street, or parted ways without a word. I won't give you an answer because you don't need one. At its core, this story has no ending. It is the confession of a peak moment, an affirmation of existence. We survived because we chose to live inside the chaos. And the strange love between us, perhaps it still lives on in the darkness of the nights, under dim street lamps, in the shadows of rusty warehouses. I have no regrets. Never have. This story is the mirror of my soul. And I love the passionate, wild, destructive woman reflected in that mirror.